everyone. Welcome back inside Centura Health Training Center for another episode of Broncos Now. As always, I'm your host, Sydney Jones, and coming up on today's episode, we'll take a look at some of the top moments from today's practice. Plus, we'll hear from head coach Sean Payton as he takes a look back at the Broncos' first preseason game versus the Cardinals. All that and more coming up. Today was the Broncos' 14th training camp practice, and head coach Sean Payton said the team focused on situational work today. Third down, red zone, 4-minute drills, and he said he really liked the work the team put in. The main conversation surrounding camp today, though, was the Broncos' first preseason game versus the Cardinals. Head coach Sean Payton detailed what he liked about the defense's performance.
Man, our early group defensively, we had 5 sacks. I thought we did a really good job. Situationally, we did a really good job. Our end-of-half mechanics, forcing them to punt, getting some field position, putting ourselves in a chance for a field goal. I was pleased with that. We actually had, one of those hurricanes where clock's running, you run your group out there. They called a timeout. End of game, I thought we handled that right.
Inside linebacker Alex Singleton and defensive lineman Jonathan Harris echoed that and talked about how important it is to get those live reps.
It's just nice to, be out there. I think, for us, it's, just getting those live reps against somebody else to be able to go to the ground, just to finish. That's the biggest thing is tackling, I think. We can work everything else all day, every day, but until you get a couple of those and you don't really know, how you're going to feel after, 9 months off, a little bit older. So, they add up. So you just got to, make sure it still feels good.
Obviously, there's always room for improvement, and all of our guys are very critical of themselves, and the coaches hard, but, I think we did well. It felt good to be back out there.
Sean Payton also went on to talk about what he saw on tape from the offense and the kicking game.
I thought offensively, it took us a minute to get going. I think we can protect better. It was good to see that first group then have success. The kicking game, look, we didn't punt it like we thought. We've had as good a 2 weeks punting the ball when you guys watch out here. So I think he'll be much better the next game we play. It's I don't want to say what you expect when you look at preseason tape, but there were a lot of good things. Last play of the game is something that will get cleaned up. That wasn't really good by us, and that would be the overview.
Plus, Sean Payton detailed the weight of these preseason games and their importance in getting a better evaluation of this team.
Certainly, the one thing about a game is, there's a little bit more to it. The rookies, it's their first time playing in the NFL. They're in a uniform, and, they're seeing a lot of players they've seen on TV. And so I think there's a little bit more nerves involved, and I think that dissipates a little bit here as we go. But I think, the full contact, the full speed live tackling gives you a little bit better evaluation than maybe a team period today, and yet all of it goes into the process, but I think a tick more.
We've seen defensive lineman Jonathan Harris step into a starting role this camp as Mike Purcell is still dealing with an injury, and head coach Sean Payton said he's really encouraged from what he's seen from him and is impressed with how hard he works. Jonathan Harris talked today about his journey and how he makes the most out of every opportunity.
I've been an underdog, my entire career, but, just taking advantage of each opportunity that I get, and that never stops throughout my entire career. And just been blessed to have coaches and GMs and, teammates around me that have believed in me.
Now joining me here inside the Broncos podcast studio is Broncos lead writer Eric Delala. Eric, most of the talk today was surrounded around the Broncos' first preseason game. We heard head coach Sean Payton earlier in the show give his thoughts on the team's performance, but for you overall, what did you think about Friday's game?
Yeah, some good, some bad. I think just as Sean Payton mentioned, listen, I know there was a lot of talk about how long the first team offense played.
Yeah.
I think it's a good thing that they stayed out there and they got those reps. You heard people in the locker room, I think Cortland Sutton was one of them, who said, listen, it's better to get some of these mistakes or to work through some of these through some of these things in the preseason as opposed to getting to week one and having to do it then. And doesn't matter how much you work in practice, there's no substitute for live action, and I think we saw that. against the Cardinals. I was impressed with Russell Wilson. I know that he was pressured at a high rate, and Sean Payton did talk about that and said, hey, we can clean some of this stuff up. But
He doesn't seem worried about it.
yeah, you know, I thought Russell Wilson made some good throws. The issues that were there in terms of them not finishing, I thought were more a result of that protection that Sean Payton talked about. And then, listen, the Broncos had 2 field goal attempts, albeit somewhat long. And if you make those and then you have that final drive, you're talking more about an initial 3 and out and then 13 points in a quarter and a half, which is obviously fine, a fine pace. If you're even if you get to halftime at 13 points, you're doing okay.
Right.
And so I thought offensively there was enough that I thought I saw progress. And then defensively, you know, Cardinals picked up a couple of first downs that first drive, but I thought you saw kind of the defense respond a little bit, obviously shut them out. And then situationally throughout the whole game, Sean Payton talked about how pleased he was with that. You didn't see pre-snap penalties for that first-team offense. Certainly more work to do, and you're not a finished product yet, but I thought for the first game it was encouraging and, you know, not perfect, but encouraging, and a chance now against the 49ers to take another step forward.
For sure. And, you know, Eric, if you look at more of, I guess, the second half of the game, who are some of the rookies that kind of stood out to you, some of the younger guys that you were impressed by?
Yeah, I mean, a rookie, Jaleel McLaughlin, obviously, he had a nice final drive there, didn't get in until late in the game, but went down the field, scored his first NFL touchdown, so you're happy for him to see that. Another younger guy, not a rookie necessarily, but Jaquan McMillian, he had a nice game, I thought, had a sack, and he, you know, I think showed some things. He's going to have a chance to compete for a roster spot here. Sang Bassey, you know, not quite as young, but still a guy trying to prove himself in this league, had that interception. So those 3 guys kind of stand out. And then, you know, you just saw guys playing hard, and I think that was what Sean Payton, even after the game, immediately before he saw the tape, he said, listen, I thought we played with effort. I thought we played hard. Still some work to do maybe in the special teams area. Coach Payton talked about, hey, some of these guys have to realize your path to a roster spot is playing special teams. Alex Singleton kind of followed him up there, and they have been doing that for 8 years. And
his journey's been a long one.
It's been a long journey for him. But, yeah, you know, I thought the effort that they played with, that's the starters still being bought in at the end of the game, dialed into what they were doing. That was good to see. You know, nobody went crazy and had like the best game of their life, I don't think. But there were some good individual performances. You hope this coming week you're able to pair that with a victory as well.
For sure. You know, Sean Payton, he talked about now that the team has already played a game, you know, it's a race, you know, from week 1, week 2, week 3 of the preseason now to see who can improve the most, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you got to get better, obviously.
Yeah.
And you know, if you're the Broncos, you can look and see what the Raiders did, right? And see how they played and kind of start to evaluate what they're doing. Right. Nobody, I assume, is going to give away too much during preseason. You don't want to let another team know exactly what you're running, what your game plan is going to be, but you can identify how certain players are playing, kind of a general overview of what that team looks like. And now the Raiders have at least a little bit of film on the Broncos, right? And the Broncos have film on themselves, too, of saying, hey, we got to get better in pass protection, or we got to clean some things up on special teams, or we got to be, that last play on defense on the 2-point conversion. We got to find a way to make that right.
Right.
Those are things that they can look at and say, okay, we've got, X number of days now before the regular season. We've got to take advantage of these practices. And if you're a starter, really, you've got to look at this week and say, this is my opportunity to improve, play a great game against San Francisco, because the way Sean Payton kind of explained on Monday, this might be it for them. He said they were going to take a completely different approach in week 3 against the Rams, so you might not see the starters after this week. So if you're those guys and you're an offensive line that says, hey, we want to look better than we did against the Cardinals, let's take this week very seriously, and let's go out and show it against the Niners.
Yeah, and Sean Payton did say they will have practice every single day this week. They'll even practice on Friday during the day before they head out for San Francisco that night. Eric, before they kind of turn the page to San Francisco, looking at training camp here, we still have a couple days left of training camp. Today was day 14 of practice, or just, I guess, some of your highlights from today's practice. Yeah,
I mean, I did think the offense looked sharp, and granted, a lot of the starting secondary was out today, kind of on a side field. No Pat Surtain, no Justin Simmons. Keaton Stearns was kind of in and out. No K'Wan Williams. So working against kind of a different tier of player, and that's no disrespect for those guys, but just we know how good Justin and Pat are, for example.
For sure.
But thought the offense was sharp. Some of the work they did was full speed. It was a lot of kind of three-quarter speed maybe, working on situational football, end of game, third down, red zone. It felt like a mental day, even if there was still kind of an element of work there from a physical standpoint. So we know they're going to be back to full pads. They're going to be going at it. Sean said to expect a physical practice on Tuesday.
Wow.
So that'll be a little bit of a change. But, yeah, I think that they kind of moved on from this game. And Sean Payton said, listen, the first few days is about the Broncos, and then we'll turn our attention to San Francisco. But, yeah, good day for the offense. Hard to tell much more than that, just kind of the pace they were going and how many guys were out.
Right. Well, one guy we haven't really talked about a lot this camp is Greg Dulcich, and he seemed to have a good day today in my eyes.
Yeah, good point, Sid. Yeah, he had a kind of the one maybe full speed period, had a couple of nice catches, and he's shown the ability certainly to track the ball down the field. It was interesting to see how he and Adam Troutman were used against the Cardinals. Obviously, Chris Manhertz did not play, and we've kind of heard about those three guys.
Right.
Sean Payton has described each of their roles with this team. But, yeah, I mean, Greg Dulcich, he's always going to be a threat to stretch the field, and hopefully we see a little bit more of that.
Yep, looking forward to it. Like you said, it's going to be more physical practice tomorrow, but fans will be back out here, and we only have a couple more days of training camp left.
I know.
It's exciting.
Got to make the most of them.
Yep. Well, Eric, appreciate you joining the show today.
You got it, Sid.
Well, that'll do it for today's episode of Broncos Now. Broncos Country, thanks so much for tuning in. I'll meet you right back here on the Broncos Podcast Network and YouTube tomorrow for another episode. See you all then.